As Corrie ten Boom, a Nazi concentration camp survivor, once said, "Worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength." So today I want to share with you how I was wound up as a child to be a worrier, how that practice didn't really serve me well, and how I have adopted some other strategies now in my life. So I was born into a family. I was the youngest. I was the fifth child. So my older siblings, when I was a little kid, tried to convince me that I had been left on the doorstep and that they had taken me in. And this was a family story because my mom's name was Easter Day, and supposedly a child was left on a doorstep on Easter Day. So anyway, I believed it. And I worried about that. I really worried that these people weren't my family, that maybe my family was really going to come, and that bothered me. But everything bothered me. I was bothered by schoolwork. I cried every morning of third grade. Virtually every morning. I thought I had a very mean teacher, and in retrospect, I think she was pretty strict. We had to have certain paper, Indian chief, yellow, long paper, and I cried. I worried I'd run out. I worried about every assignment I got. I just, in fact, worried a lot. In college, it got so bad that I remember ending up in health services because I was an insomniac because I worried so much. I was on an academic scholarship, and I was just pretty wound up to worry. But through that situation, I realized that I wasn't always worrying about the right things. And really, worrying wasn't really paying off for me. And that was revealed in a few instances throughout my life. My sister, the one who's like 12 years older than me, was my idol. And she was pretty and smart, all these things. And I can remember one shopping trip that we took in high school. She had been kind of sick. She'd had a sore throat, but not too sick to miss the shopping trip. So we picked her up. We were going to go to St. Clair Square. It was my mom and the three sisters. Two sisters and me. And we ended up in Highland at a French restaurant, and I remember looking across the table and Patty's face was drawn to the side. And then she started shaking, and my thought was, like we talked about, that she was having a stroke. And I can remember someone saying, "She's having a stroke." And the ambulance came, and they took her to Highland Hospital, they triaged her, and they sent her over across the river to St. Louis. And for the next 5 weeks or so, she was suffering with seizures. And they diagnosed her with St. Louis encephalitis. That is a mosquito-borne illness. Now, you see, I worried about everything, but I hadn't worried about mosquitoes. In fact, my sister wasn't an outdoors person. The chances of her getting bit by a mosquito and getting something from it, that wasn't even something that crossed our minds. You see, I wasn't worrying about the right things. You know, for the past 35 years, she has struggled with post-encephalitic epilepsy. She can't drive. She had to go on disability. She's had a really tragic life from a mosquito that we hadn't even thought to worry about. I got married at 23, and we didn't want to have kids right away, and so we didn't. But then we started wanting to have kids, and we started trying, and we weren't successful. And I can remember going to fertility specialists and miscarrying several times. And I worried that I'd never be able to have a kid. And I thought, you know, I had always defined myself as someone who was going to have children, and it just worried me that I never was going to be able to do that. But lo and behold, I got pregnant, and I thought, I don't have to worry anymore. Like, my prayers have been answered, so now it's just going to be coasting. But then I went to my first Lamaze class, and I can remember the instructor coming over, and she was demonstrating something for the class, and she put her hands on my belly, and she said, "Honey, you're having contractions. You need to go upstairs." Now, this was like my 6th month of pregnancy. That was my last Lamaze class. And from then on, I was monitored for early labor. And eventually, they put me on bed rest. And I worried about that because I thought, I can't lay on my right side for 2 months. I mean, I'm just not driven that way. Like, that is going to kill me. And I didn't need to worry about that because it only lasted 2 days. And they came to deliver my blood pressure cuff, and my bottom number was 95. And they said, "Honey, you have to go to the hospital right now." And so I wasn't worrying about the right things. I ended up having a baby 10 weeks early. I'd never worried about that. Like, that hadn't even crossed my mind. I'd never seen a preemie. I'd never been to a NICU. I mean, I'd never even thought about that possibility. You see, I was worrying about the wrong things. On July 22nd, 2013, that's my preemie, by the way. That's David. He's 15 now. On July 22nd, 2013, it was a normal summer day. I hadn't even gotten dressed, hardly. I didn't have my makeup on. The DirecTV guy was there. My kids came down and said they were going to go on a bike ride. Whatever. Be careful. Have fun. My one kid said, I said, eat breakfast. He's like, I don't need to eat breakfast. I was like, okay. About 20 minutes later, I got a phone call from my older son, and he said, you need to come get us. Cameron says he fell off his bike, and he says he has a stick in his throat. I said, I've never worried about sticks in throats. I've worried about concussions and broken arms. I mean, I've been worried about the wrong things. I'm like, I can't find you. I mean, I heard a guy say, do you want me to call the ambulance? And I said immediately, David, have that man call an ambulance. I cannot find you on a trail. I'm in a car. Mom, just come get us. We're kind of describe where I was. Luckily, I found him. I threw the bike in the car, and I ran by my doctor's office because Cameron looked fine. He had a few little slits here, but he kept saying, aha. Like, okay, whatever. So I took him to the doctor, and he kind of felt around. He goes, you know, I said, where should I take him? Should I go across the river? Should I go to Anderson? He goes, for this, you can go to Anderson. Ended up in Anderson Hospital by mistake. And they didn't find anything. They scoped him, did a CT scan, nothing showed up. But he was convinced. So we took him across the river, started over. About 5 o'clock that day, now mind you, this kid is not eating at all. We had 2 ENTs roll into the room, and they said, look, little guy, we're not comfortable with this. Like, we know you described that there was a stick there. We can't find anything, but there could be. So we're going to scope you. So Steve and I held down Cameron. They went up his nose, down his throat, and saw a splinter. Splinter, there it is. He does feel something. So we're going to go in. We're going to get that splinter out. About an hour later, they came and got me and said, you need to sit down. That was in his throat. It was this big. And they pulled it out of his throat. It had lodged. It had gone in here, and he pulled it out, and it got lodged in the back of his throat. And they pulled it out this way. So I'd never worried about that. You see, I was worried about the wrong things. I was spending a lot of my life doing it. So I decided through these instances that worry wasn't really paying off and that I should replace it with some other behavior. So I've tried to do that, and I'm still working on it. But instead of worrying now, I try to pray. Martin Luther said, pray and let God worry. Instead, sometimes I breathe, I try to exercise, and I try to replace this unproductive activity with something that might be more productive. And I want to share just a little bit of advice from Baz Luhrmann's Everyone is Free to Wear Sunscreen. I think it hits on the way I feel about worry.
Of the class of '99, wear sunscreen. If I could offer you only one tip for the future, sunscreen would be it. The long-term benefits of sunscreen have been proved by scientists, whereas the rest of my advice has no basis more reliable than my own meandering experience. I will dispense this advice now. Enjoy the power and beauty of your youth. But never mind. You will not understand the power and beauty of your youth until they fade. But trust me, in 20 years, you'll look back at photos of yourself and recall in a way you can't grasp now how much possibility lay before you and how fabulous you really looked. You are not as fat as you imagine. Don't worry about the future, or worry, but know that worrying is as effective as trying to solve an algebra equation by chewing bubblegum. The real troubles in your life are apt to be things that never crossed your worried mind, the kind that blindside you at 4 p.m. on some idle Tuesday. Do one thing every day that scares you.
My mom often calls me and gives me a report of people who've died in my hometown. Sometimes it's a 70-year-old who died at teaching Sunday school recently. A couple weeks ago, it was a 44-year-old girl who I had gone to high school with and who died of breast cancer. We have started ending our phone calls with these 3 words: live every day. And today I hope I've shown you that while I was born to be a worrier, I have struggled with that. It hasn't really paid off in my life. And so I've tried to live differently. And I believe that's good advice, to live every day, because life is simply too short to worry.